Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a cool little strap review for you from the brand Uncle Seiko. Now, of course, if you are a big fan of Seiko modding, then you're probably aware of Uncle Seiko. They basically are a strap and bracelet maker made very popular by the particular mod community. Now, this particular unit we're going to be reviewing today is actually their Jubilee bracelet for the SARB 033 and 035. I do have in frame there, though, their awesome little waffle strap that I have on my 6105 mod. So just kind of to give you an idea of really what they're more known for and kind of how they picked up steam was these really cool kind of vintage-esque re-release straps. Now, though, they are moving into the bracelet territory. And what I can report to you guys is that they are also really nice as far as the fitment, and there's definitely some great care that goes into kind of the curating of the applications that they do have there over at the team of Uncle Seiko. So with all that said, let's go ahead and take a closer look. Okay, so one thing I will also mention is that it comes with this cool sticker that's also loomed. Pretty cool. So anyways, very quickly, they're really known for these really cool reissues of these awesome straps. And, of course, if you are into the Seiko Mod community, you probably recognize stuff like this. Was basically a turtle reissue that has been modified using actual Seiko parts to make it look a little bit more like the original 6105. And that actually do have a custom made bezel here, but of course this was made quite a while ago, and now they're in abundance. But anyways, kind of a quick little fun trip down memory lane. If you haven't seen the full review for this one, definitely check it out. I'll pull this off screen. A big shout out to Uncle Seiko. Very cool. So let's go ahead and pick up this piece here, the main event. So as you can see, the SARB, right? Everybody loves it. It's pretty quintessential as far as everybody and their idea of what Seiko can do at what price point. Although, of course, this was like 14 years ago when this thing was first released. The price point was quite impressive then, quite impressive now, still today. And I think there's a lot that goes into kind of recapturing the magic of this timepiece. For me, it's a piece that I more so kind of needed to own for the channel versus something that I really necessarily just loved for myself. I think it's a good baseline as far as an indicator of quality and spec and whatnot. And I think it is quite, at this point, a near iconic look. Especially with some of the tricks that Seiko does, and you can kind of get a great example as far as the fit and finish in this timepiece. But one thing that didn't work for me, unfortunately, was the OEM bracelet. Now, although it was finished well enough, it just couldn't get the right fitment for me because, one, the links were kind of long, there are no half links, and the clasp didn't provide for enough micro adjustments for me. So what I've always been looking for, essentially, is a metal bracelet option. Now, on strap, I just felt like the shape of the lugs and the case shape, it really wasn't the best watch to have on a strap. I mean, I've seen some really cool combinations and whatnot, but I think this one is best suited on a bracelet. Now, one of the issues is that when you're looking for a bracelet, because of the watch itself, you'll find many manufacturers making very thick bracelets to go with a pretty thick watch. But honestly, it just doesn't suit the overall, the dimensions and the proportions I think needed for a piece like this. And as you can see here, definitely a lot more dialed in terms of proportions, which is probably my favorite thing about this. So you're going to have the 20 millimeter lugs. Everything's going to taper down to 16 millimeters. Everything is solid as far as these links. Of course, though, The end links are hollow, and the clasp is pretty much just a press clasp. It's not milled or anything like that. But you know what? It's really all about the proportions on here. So that's definitely the key. And then of course these are screw-in links, so you are going to get a nice level of build quality there. So quite impressive from that standpoint. You know, I will have all of the specs and whatnot when I get the video together. They'll go across during the beginning of the video, but you know, essentially it's brushed and polished. And the nice thing is that they actually provide two different sets of spring bars. And one of the things that it really works is that they actually provide a 19 millimeter, or was it a 21? But basically, the end links are you have to really work them in. So there's different spring bars that come in. You can get them a little bit shorter or a little bit longer and kind of work around how you can get them to fit in here. And I believe it was the actually 19 millimeter spring bars I was able to get a better fit on for me, and it worked out really well. But by no means is this a complete plug and play application. You are going to really have to know your way around essentially your strap change tool there. But it's once you get it on though, the fitment is really on point, and you can see it flows really well with the case. All the alignment looks really great. So really nice from that standpoint. And then of course at the end of the day, although it isn't super robust at the end link or at the clasp, it still flows really well with the watch, right? Because like, what are your other options? You know, it's the much thicker overbuilt options that are out there, as far as especially for the Jubilee. Or they do have, you know, there are oyster options, but honestly the way those end links are is they normally have the male end link, which really extend out the case. Here you can see the case doesn't get any extension, so those of you with smaller wrists will still be able to wear it small. And although my wrists are, you know, they're quite large, you know, not super big or anything, but definitely on the larger side of average, it still fits, of course, like a dream. So, you know, with all that said, let's actually go ahead and get this piece on wrist. All right, now as you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, this thing wears like an absolute dream. Get it a little up close, even with the lens distortion and whatnot, from having a wristy kind of wrist shot there. It still doesn't seem oversized or anything like that, but you can really get an idea of the scale here. Throw a little bit of arm more in there. And yeah, I mean, honestly, the SARB is on the smaller side of wristwatches as far as the, you know, what I would wear. But I think the nice thing is that it has that touch of sportiness. You know, it does have lume and whatnot. This ivory dial does play with the light really well. It makes it quite versatile, so it can kind of blend with things when you're wearing white or whatnot, or cream. You don't necessarily have to have an exact match. But this thing wears really nice, and you can see on my wrist, it just drapes really well, feels well, you know, really nice. You can shake it around like any Jubilee. It's going to be quite comfortable, but this one is built quite solid. It's not overbuilt or anything like that. It's just, it's built, right? It's not meant to turn this into a luxury watch or anything. It really more so speaks to the vintage aesthetic that you're going to see here with those dolphin hands and a very clean layout there as far as the dial goes and the indices. All ties in really well. And I really do enjoy this clasp. You know, I think that nice dramatic taper is one of the things that are kind of my favorite when it comes to a bracelet, because it does add a lot of comfort. I do wear my bracelets a little bit looser than probably most, you know, which means that they're going to be riding lower down on the wrist and closer to the hand, versus, you know, somebody who's going to wear it a little bit higher up on the wrist, above the wrist bone. Then you could probably wear it a little bit tighter and whatnot. But let's say if I move it up here for comparison's sake, it still has obviously the movement and your kind of wrist articulation you get still important when you're wearing it higher up on the wrist. But of course, because of the tightness and whatnot, it's, for me at least, a little bit less comfortable. So I like to wear it down low. And then, but that means that the importance of how comfortable it is and how much I can articulate my wrist comes even more into play, right? Because it's further down, there's a little bit more movement, especially if I shake my wrist a little bit, it can hang even lower. But the nice thing is, because of how ergonomic this case is, and then how much flex I can actually get out of the bracelet, it actually works out really, really well. And I'm quite a big fan. So although typically I do my low light transition and loom shots to highlight the watch, I'd actually, what I'll do is I'll get into that so you can take a closer look at this fit and finish here under some different lighting conditions, because my studio lights do a nice job of getting the colors to render and whatnot for how this is going to look in a indirect sunlight. But as far as non-optimal lighting, you get a little bit of a better idea of that fit and finish, because it's going to be a little bit higher contrast at times, versus here it can appear maybe a little bit washed out and kind of overly nice. So let's go ahead and check that out. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and hit the lights. As you can see, the loom's quite good. And then a little fun with that Uncle Seiko sticker, which is loomed, which I thought was pretty nice. But essentially now, guys, what I'm going to do is I'll pull this off out of view. But take a look at the finishing on the links there, the way that the light really will play and dance off of that. Here we go. A little bit harsher here. Take a look at how uniform that brushing is, though. Really quite nice. I'm pretty impressed, and I think it flows really well with the rest of the case there, the brush and polish. Really great highlight, and I think the Jubilee bracelet does suit this watch really well. If you guys are fans of the channel, you've probably seen my SCVS001 video, which comes on a really, really nice kind of multi-link, almost beads of rice-like bracelet. Uses the same case as the SARB. Is actually a kind of an earlier, more luxurious iteration before they went more towards this route of kind of that ultimate versatility. But for those of you that are big fans of the SARB 035, you'll kind of get a nice look at also the way that dial plays with the light and renders. So a little 2-for-1 here from that standpoint. But really nice, tidy little timepiece. Nothing crazy, of course, again, but a nice, I think, as far as quality goes, a nice statement of kind of what you can get, in the lower range. For not too much money, you can get something like this. These bracelets, though, they're actually not super expensive or anything like that, but I wouldn't call them cheap at $74. Now, if you're willing to pay $74 for a bracelet that has hollow end links and a hollow, essentially stamped clasp, that's up to you. But for me, it was a bit of a necessity on this watch because I just couldn't do the bracelet. I actually had it on a really cheap Alpha Jubilee before this, and that thing was it was in the right direction as far as the scale goes, but the ultimate tinniness of it was a little bit too far down the other end of the spectrum. Here, I think this is a little bit closer to that, a slightly more premium feel, but again, not trying to be a luxurious, definitely more so focusing on the vintage theme here. As far as, I guess, my closing overall thoughts, this is probably the best bracelet option I've found for the SARB 035 and 033 yet. Although the build quality could be a bit better, and it's more spec wise as far as that. Basically, if they had solid end links or solid clasp, that would be nice. But you know what, the fitment and proportions just suit the case perfectly, so I can't be too mad. And it wasn't too expensive. I mean, at this point, some of these aftermarket bracelets are starting to get in the 100, 120 range when you have all the milled pieces and whatnot in them. So for somebody who really is more so known for their rubber strap straps to come out with a metal strap, I can understand that. Obviously, it's a lot tougher when that's not your bread and butter and you're not hitting huge MOQs or whatnot. So I can appreciate this, and I really can also appreciate the fact that you know, they provided extra spring bars to make fitment a little bit easier. That was really nice, and I didn't, instead of having to kind of beat the watch down as much, it was nicer. I was able to just kind of get it dialed in. So I think that was cool that they actually go into the package with the expectation of kind of keeping that modder in mind, and also just the general install. You know, they're thinking about the customer. So I can't be disappointed with that. But definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I know there's a lot of SARB 035 fans out there, and just general Seiko fans that may own this piece or something like it. So let me know what you think in the comments below. If you like the video, please hit like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.